ये यूनिट मसनूई ज़हानत से तैयार किया गया है, इसलिए इसमें अल्फाज की दुरुस्तगी और अदायगी में गलती का एहतमाल हो सकता है। ऐसी सूरत में असल यूनिट से रुजू करें। मौलाना आज़ाद नेशनल उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी के सेंटर फॉर डिस्टेंस एंड ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन के तालीमी प्रोग्राम में आपका खैर मकदम है। ये ऑडियो यूनिवर्सिटी के कॉपीराइट शुदा खुद इक्तिसाबी मवाद से तैयार किया गया है।
ये मवाद मौलाना आज़ाद नेशनल उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी के एआई की मदद से तैयार करदा ऑडियो सीरीज का हिस्सा है।
Welcome to the deep dive. If you are joining us today, you are probably looking for that shortcut to being well informed
Right.
without the overwhelming feeling of information overload. And that is exactly what we are here for. We have an incredibly fascinating stack of sources to go through today.
We really do.
Specifically, we are looking at two highly comprehensive academic frameworks. One details the essentials of communication, and the other meticulously dissects the flow of communication.
Yeah, it's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. Our mission for this deep dive is to map out the hidden mechanics of human interaction. We want to decode how information truly moves through our lives, our relationships, and our workplaces. Because, as you will quickly see, communication is so much more than just talking.
That is exactly right. I mean, if we start by looking at the very root of the word, communication actually comes from the Latin word communis, which
Means to share.
Right. Exactly. It simply means to share. It is the fundamental process of creating relationships. There is a brilliant quote in the research from an author named Millett, who calls communication the bloodstream of an organization.
Oh, I like that. The bloodstream.
Yeah, I think that is the perfect framing for our deep dive today. Without that bloodstream, without that constant, uninterrupted flow of sharing, society and business simply cannot function. If that blood flow stops, the organization collapses.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how this bloodstream flows, we have to look at the anatomy of a message itself.
Yeah.
Like, where did we even get the blueprint for how we communicate?
Well, we actually have to go all the way back to ancient Greece.
To Aristotle.
Yes, to Aristotle and his famous book, Rhetoric. That is where communication got its very first proper framework. He basically gave us the fundamental elements, the sender, the receiver, the context, and the message.
It is kind of mind-blowing to think that a model from ancient Greece still dictates how a modern CEO drafts a Slack message today.
It really is. It is the foundational model, and what is interesting is how it evolved. Later theorists, specifically Lasswell, realized Aristotle's model was missing something crucial.
The channel, right?
Yeah, exactly, the channel. So the modern process we use today is a dynamic dual-way system. It moves from the source to the message, through a channel, and finally to the receiver. But the critical point here is that it's a dual-way process. It is not just about sending the information.
Right, because if the other person doesn't get it, what's the point?
Precisely. The process is only deemed successful when the intended message is actually comprehended similarly by the recipient. If the receiver does not decode it properly, the whole effort is totally muddled.
And it is not just happening in a vacuum. It is never just person A talking to person B in a perfectly sterile white room.
There is some fascinating hidden elements that constantly shape how you, as a listener, receive information.
Right, the environment. Yeah, the environment, which is the physical or psychological space where the interaction happens. Are you in a loud coffee shop? Are you in the tense boardroom? Then you have context, which involves the psychological and physical expectations of both people.
That's a huge one.
It really is. And my personal favorite, interference. We usually think of interference as a loud noise, like a siren going off outside.
Yeah, or construction.
Exactly. But the source material highlights it can be poor video quality on a Zoom call, dim light, an unfocused image on a presentation screen, or even just defective audio. All of these hidden elements dictate whether your meticulously crafted message actually lands.
Precisely. And the channel that you choose to encode your message is just as critical. Broadly speaking, this is categorized into verbal and nonverbal communication. Now, verbal communication relies on words, but there is a very distinct mechanical difference in how we use those words depending on the timing.
Right, the difference between synchronous and asynchronous communication. Synchronous is real-time interaction.
Face-to-face.
Yeah, like having a face-to-face conversation with a colleague. It is immediate. You can read the room. Asynchronous communication, on the other hand, happens over a longer period without that immediate back and forth.
Like emails?
Emails, letters, text messages, it is delayed. And the text points out that most informal communication is spoken and synchronous, while formal communication in organizations relies heavily on the written asynchronous word.
What's fascinating here is how the data contrasts that verbal communication with the nonverbal symphony we perform every day.
The nonverbal symphony, I love that phrase.
It really is a symphony. Nonverbal communication uses signs, symbols, gestures, and body language. It's the eye roll during a presentation, the tightly crossed arms, or the exact firmness of a handshake. In fact, facial expressions often convey feelings of sadness, happiness, or excitement far more amply than words ever could.
So true. Sometimes your face is communicating something completely different than what your polite words are expressing.
Excellent.
I have to admit, it is terrifying to think about, actually. Before I even say hello in a meeting, my posture and my physical distance from the table have already spoken for me.
It is a profound realization. Take proximity, for example. The physical distance you maintain from your audience. If you step in too close, maintaining a very short distance, it is almost universally read as a threatening or aggressive gesture.
It feels invasive.
Right. But if you stand too far away, it signals awkwardness and detachment. Then there is touch. Shaking hands or patting a back are powerful indicators of affection and successful connection. But touching signs convey entirely different meanings and carry different weights depending on the gender of the speaker and receiver.
Which is a minefield in itself.
It is. And of course, appearance, your outfit, your grooming, your jewelry. These elements forcefully communicate your identity before a single syllable is uttered. They connect you to the listener in a purely nonverbal way.
Which brings us to the listener's toolkit. If you want to master all of this and become a highly persuasive leader, someone who genuinely impacts their personal and professional spheres, the research outlines a remarkably practical framework.
The 7 C's of communication.
The 7 C's, yes. Those who lack these skills are directly responsible for low motivation and poor productivity in their organizations. But rather than just listing these off, let's imagine you are writing a high-stakes email.
Okay, I like this.
Let's say you are emailing your company's executive team to ask for a massive budget increase for your department.
That is a perfect scenario. So you are staring at a blank screen. The first thing you need is clarity. This means knowing exactly what you intend to convey. Your language must be clear, avoiding any unnecessary information.
Keep it focused.
Right. If your request for that budget is ambiguous or buried in the 4th paragraph, it spoils the entire effort. Once you have that clear goal, you move to correctness. This is about perfect grammar, proper language, and making sure the sense of your message is completely accurate.
No typos.
In a high-stakes email, it means flawless spelling and appropriate words, achieved through careful proofreading. A single typo in a budget request can secretly undermine your authority.
And once it is clear and correct, you have to ruthlessly edit for conciseness. This is one of the best tips from the framework. Use action verbs and avoid unnecessary details. Never use more words than required.
Less is more?
Exactly. The reason. It literally saves time and energy for both you and the executive reading it. A short, simple, to-the-point message just has a greater impact. No one wants to read a novel when a bulleted list will do.
Absolutely. But as you are cutting it down, you cannot lose courtesy. This is about taking care of the receiver's feelings. It means avoiding discriminatory or overly aggressive language to show sincerity and build a lasting goodwill relationship.
So you can be concise without being blunt or rude.
You have to be. That brings us to concreteness. A successful message must be concrete, meaning you supply only available facts. You don't say, we need more money for marketing. You say, we need $50,000 to increase lead generation by 20%.
So specific.
Yes. Avoid abstract ideas, avoid vagueness, and make use of the active voice to keep the communication authentic and real.
Okay, I have to admit, the next one, consideration, feels a bit out of place in a strict business framework. Isn't a budget request just about getting the cold, hard facts across? Do I really need to be considerate of an executive's feelings?
You would think it is just about the facts, but the research actually argues the opposite. Consideration requires putting yourself directly in the receiver's shoes.
Okay.
A good communicator considers the specific issues and hurdles the recipient might face when receiving the message. If you know the executive team is currently stressed about a recent dip in quarterly revenue, you frame your budget request not as an expense, but as a guaranteed revenue driver.
Oh, wow.
You relate to them, you involve them, you anticipate their hesitation.
That makes total sense. You're managing their reaction before they even have it. And finally, you wrap it all up with completeness. An incomplete message always leaves a poor impact and generates endless follow-up questions.
It does.
To be complete, your communication must definitively answer the core questions: who, what, when, where, and how.
Exactly. If you hit all 7 C's, your message is bulletproof. But having a perfect message is only half the battle, because once you hit send on that perfect email, it has to travel. And navigating the maze of how information travels in an organization is where we see the absolute complexity of the flow of communication.
The actual flow.
Yes. Let us start with vertical flow. This is communication moving up and down the hierarchy.
Right, starting with downward communication. This flows from top management to subordinates. The main goal here is to instruct, educate, and motivate. Interestingly, modern business organizations are actively ditching complex, jargon-heavy channels for this.
They have to.
Yeah, they realize that downward communication must use simple, lucid language that is strictly to the point so it does not lead to confusion on the factory floor or the sales desk.
And the reverse of that is upward communication, flowing from the bottom to the top. Now, it is easy to think of upward communication as just turning in weekly work reports or giving updates on sales numbers.
That's what most people assume.
But the framework states something crucial. Upward communication is fundamentally non-authoritative, and its true value lies in providing feedback. It actually facilitates the release of pent-up anger among employees.
That is fascinating.
It is. If there is no channel for upward flow, that frustration boils over. Furthermore, for upward flow to work, top management must have the leadership qualities to not only accept suggestions, but to actively listen to the grapevine.
The grapevine, it is so true. Managers are often terrified of office gossip, but it is actually their most valuable diagnostic tool to understand the true mood and biases of their staff.
Absolutely.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because we have up, we have down, and then we have horizontal flow. This is lateral communication among people of equal rank or similar status. Imagine the head of marketing needing to coordinate with the head of sales.
Yes, horizontal communication, sometimes called interscalar communication. To understand this, we need to look at a concept introduced by organizational theorist Henry Fayol. He called horizontal communication a gangplank, or a bridge.
A gangplank.
Think of it like a literal wooden gangplank thrown between two pirate ships sailing side by side. It lets the crew cross over directly to talk to each other without having to climb all the way up their own mast, shout to the other captain, and have that captain shout back down to their crew.
That is a great visual.
The defining feature of this gangplank is that it does not actually appear on the formal organizational chart. It is an informal, invisible bridge built between equals to expedite understanding and coordination.
It sounds incredibly efficient. You bypass the formal channels, meaning you get quick decisions and a readiness to accept tasks without having to constantly refer every little matter to higher management. It saves valuable time for everyone. But it's also a massive double-edged sword.
It is. Because it bypasses formal channels, it comes with severe limitations. It can easily disrupt the organizational hierarchy. There is a brilliant observation regarding this. When two subsystems, like our marketing and sales directors, choose to communicate horizontally over that gangplank, it is entirely possible they will then create a whole new set of messages just to tell their respective bosses what they were communicating about.
Oh, that defeats the purpose.
In other words, this informal shortcut can ironically create massive message overload for the total system. It can also lead to deep confusion and turf wars because the formal structure is being circumvented.
Which perfectly transitions us to the things that completely derail this bloodstream we've been talking about. Let's look at the breakdowns, the barriers, and the bottlenecks. There is a whole host of everyday hurdles that ruin a good message.
Oh, definitely.
We already mentioned jargon, which alienates people, but there are also social taboos, topics that are entirely off limits in a particular cultural or corporate context, making the sender completely unable to express their true emotions or concerns.
Right.
There's also a lack of interest from the receiver, false assumptions, prejudices, and cultural differences, where varying communicative norms cause messages to spectacularly fail.
And importantly, we have to consider physical and psychological disabilities. Hearing or speech disabilities can hamper verbal communication, while visual disabilities make those crucial nonverbal gestures we discussed earlier impossible to decode. But if we connect this to the bigger picture...
The organizational barriers.
Yes, the most complex barriers occur within the organizational structure itself. As information passes through various hierarchical levels, humans inevitably manipulate it. It is the classic game of telephone.
Oh, right.
They distort it, sometimes intentionally to protect themselves, sometimes accidentally. By the time a directive travels from the CEO at the top down to the frontline workers at the bottom, or vice versa, it has often lost its authenticity and utility.
It gets filtered too much.
Exactly. The rigid hierarchy itself becomes a barrier because messages are sent without necessary explanation, and the subordinates, who are always at the receiving end, simply do not understand the true meaning or the why behind the order.
That brings up a fascinating clash of priorities. It is a fundamental conflict of interest that causes so much friction. Lower-level employees desperately want to hear about their salary, their incentives, their job protection, and their career growth.
Of course they do.
But the administration, they just want the employees to follow instructions and hit their KPIs. This clash of expectations creates massive frustration. It's the classic corporate reality, where the administration sends out a 10-page memo about a new workflow, and the employees are just thinking, this meeting could have been an email, and by the way, are we getting our bonuses?
Exactly.
That misalignment directly causes interruptions in the communication flow.
And we cannot overstate the ultimate cost of these interruptions. There is a very stark modern analogy for this. Think about the flow of communication like your company's internet service. If there is a breakdown in the internet data, no communication occurs between senders and receivers.
Everything stops.
Emails sit in outboxes. Servers cannot be reached. What happens? The entire business of the organization comes to a complete standstill. Nobody can do their jobs. Without effective communication, an organization simply cannot function. The bloodstream stops, and the organism dies.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means that understanding these mechanics gives you a massive advantage in whatever room you walk into.
Absolutely.
Mastering the 7 C's. Ensuring your messages are clear, correct, concise, courteous, concrete, considerate, and complete makes you a persuasive force. Recognizing that your proximity, your handshake, and your appearance are screaming signals before you even speak gives you control over your nonverbal symphony.
It gives you incredible power.
It really does.
Yeah.
And understanding whether your message needs to travel up the ladder, down the chain of command, or across the gangplank to appear allows you to navigate your professional life with incredible precision. Communication isn't just talking. It is the infrastructure of your success.
This raises an important question, and it is something I want to leave you to ponder. There is a highly specific, almost haunting detail mentioned in the research regarding the modern workplace. It notes that in huge organizations today, modern mechanical devices and software are used to seamlessly facilitate the flow of communication.
Right, all the apps and tools.
Because of these devices, massive amounts of data, directives, and information can flow from one end of a global corporation to the other without disturbing anyone's work, without making any noise. Complete silence is maintained in the office. Everyone is just staring at their screens, typing.
It's eerie when you think about it.
So I leave you with this thought. If communication truly is the bloodstream of human connection, is a completely silent workplace the ultimate sign of perfect, frictionless communication? Or is it, in fact, the ultimate barrier to genuine human interaction?
That is an incredible thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the essentials and flows of communication. We hope you're walking away with a new toolkit for how you connect with the world. We warmly invite you back for our next exploration. Until then, keep decoding the world around you.